They'd hidden it. Then Holly looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're never traveling again." She stood there in my kitchen, oven mitt still on her hand like a piece of armor, while Daniel hovered behind her, arms crossed, trying to look firm. I had already torn through the drawer where I always kept my passport, the tin box with rubber bands, the coat pocket where I sometimes forgot it after trips. Nothing. Just dust and an old ticket stub from a fare long closed down. My pulse banged at my temples like a door refusing to open. "I'm 74, not 7, I said. "Give it back." "Mom," Daniel began, using that careful voice people save for old folks and traffic stops. "We're worried. The flights, the stairs, the crowds." "Your mother gets dizzy," Holly cut in, her tone quick. "And you don't always remember your pills." "I remember what belongs to me," I told her, keeping my voice low. Raised voices travel over hedges. Holly set the mitt on the counter, then swung open the cupboard above my head like she expected to find evidence of my fragility hiding next to the tea. "We're not being cruel, Lorraine. We're being responsible. You don't need to go overseas to feel whole. There's a coast across the ocean," I said, "with my dead waiting on it. That's my trail." Daniel's jaw hardened. His father's jaw without his father's softness. "It's final, Mom. We canceled your booking. You can't go." "Can't?" I repeated, tasting the word like iron. "Because you don't have a passport," Holly said, touching my sleeve as though I were a stray animal. "This is love. Boundaries are love." I glanced at the empty space on the shelf where my passport should have been. That blank square stared back at me like an open mouth. I'd been careful. I'd planned the dates, the connections, the guest house that still left a key under a seashell. I'd kept the suitcase ready under the bed. I had told no one until I told them, and the room had turned cold when I did. Now I knew why. "Then I'll file a police report," I said evenly. "I'll tell them exactly when it went missing." Daniel flushed. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm plenty of things," I said. "Stubborn, useful, sometimes wrong. But I am not dramatic." Silence came into the room like a third person. The clock ticked. A radio hissed faintly from somewhere down the street. And in that quiet I saw it. Their fear, my fear, and the ease of confusing the two. When you wrap control in soft words, it looks like care. "I'll make you tea," Holly said, already reaching for the kettle. "Let's sit. We can compromise. Maybe a virtual tour, the museum has those now." I pictured the harbor on a screen, neat and color-corrected. No smell of diesel. No push of salt wind against your face. A pretend sea. "No tea," I said. "You should go. Traffic's bad after 5. "Mom," Daniel tried again, softer this time. "Please don't fight us. You don't need to prove anything." "I'm not proving," I said. "I'm going. With or without a passport." Holly's smile looked like the kind people wear at funerals for men they never liked. "Lorraine, be reasonable." Her voice turned my name into a label slapped on a jar that didn't fit. I stepped aside so they could leave. They shared a glance. A knot tied tight in an instant. Shoes on. Door open. A draft curled at my ankles. "We'll bring groceries tomorrow," Daniel said, standing on the step. "Text us if you need anything." "I will," I said, and closed the door on their careful kindness. The house exhaled. I kept my palm on the wood until my hand stopped trembling. Then I did the small things women do when someone tries to tell them who they are. Washed a cup. Wiped the counter. Fed the basil on the sill. Routine steadies the hands while the mind sharpens its knife. After that I checked again. Drawer, tin, coat pocket, travel pouch. Even the hollowed-out book where I once thought hiding meant safety. No passport. I sat at the little table with a sheet of lined paper, the kind that shows every pause in the pen. I made 3 columns: what I have, what I need, what I refuse. What I have. Copies, numbers, cash for emergencies, shoes that can carry me farther than anyone thinks, a body that groans but still obeys, a name at the consulate who once worked beside me as a nurse and still remembers my hands. What I need. A way to the city, a document that opens gates, a witness in case someone tries to speak for me again, a quiet morning. What I refuse. Permission. The kettle clicked itself off, though I hadn't turned it on. I filled it anyway and left it there. Then I pulled the suitcase from under the bed and rolled it across the rug. Its wheels hummed steady and low. A good sound. Outside, the sky had gone the color of dirty dishwater before it clears. I switched on the hall lamp, folded my cardigan, and set it neatly on the case. There would be time for socks, for pills, for the list stuck on the fridge with a cow-shaped magnet. Time to sleep. At the window I watched the street. A girl jogged past with red headphones. A man dragged his garbage bin, wheels clattering over cracks. Someone laughed in the distance. My heartbeat settled into its old, strong rhythm, the one it keeps when I hold a line steady through a storm. I am not a storm, I thought. I am weathered enough to outlast one. They'll see, I said to the glass, and the woman in the reflection said it with me. I stared out the bus window and let the scenery iron out my nerves. Billboards flashing past, rows of trees, a hawk perched on a telephone pole like a sentinel. When we were dropped near the central station, I hung back until the others drifted off, then headed for the public library. No one there asks why you need the printer or how long you stare at the wall maps. I sat at a computer, booked a one-way ticket under my maiden name Lorraine Mayers, heading north the next morning. Paid in cash at the front kiosk, folded the ticket twice and slipped it into my shoe. From there, I walked 3 blocks to the notary's office. The girl behind the desk didn't even glance up until I asked, "Do I need an appointment to revoke a power of attorney?" Her eyes blinked awake. "No, ma'am. Just an ID and the original paperwork." I slid her the copy Marlene had signed 5 years ago, back when we thought I might need help with the bank. She tapped her keyboard, scanned the form, then finally looked at me like she was seeing me for real. "Everything seems in order." 7 minutes later, with a couple strokes of a pen, I'd taken my name back from the people who thought they owned it. On the way out, I stopped at a flower stand and bought a single yellow lily. Not because I needed it, but because I could. Choice is a freedom, and I intended to practice it. When I got home, Marlene was in the kitchen, griping into the phone about an invoice. I smiled. She didn't even ask where I'd been. Just nodded toward the tote bag and said, "Finally cleaned out the attic?" "Something like that," I said. That night I didn't sleep. Not from nerves, from clarity. Tomorrow I'd leave. No confrontation, no goodbye. Just gone the way they had left me so many times before. Quietly, slowly, without explanation. The attic had always been mine. James hated ladders, and Marlene said the dust made her cough. That was fine with me, it meant they never questioned what I kept up there. Boxes of photographs, receipts from our first house, my mother's cracked hand mirror. And behind an insulation panel, a black leather folder. I laid it open on the ironing board. The only surface Marlene never hovered over. Inside were my birth certificate, stamped with a raised seal from 1949. My social security card, edges soft from decades of use. A nursing license, expired but still real. I lined them up neatly and snapped a picture with my old phone. Then I wrote out a list. Not because my memory was slipping, it wasn't, but because order is how you win when power isn't on your side. Early train ticket done. Passport secured. Power of attorney revoked. Emergency contact change at the clinic pending. Bank access pending. Close online tracking tomorrow morning. I slid the papers back into the folder, then dug out the small metal box where I kept the backup keys. Among them was one labeled B10 Green Bank. James and I had opened that box together. He used to joke, "If they try to bury us alive in this house, we'll dig our way out through the bank." I smiled, clutching the key. That evening, Marlene asked, "What do you want for dinner?" "I'll cook," I said. Her eyebrows lifted. "You sure? I can order Thai." "No need. Just stew." Routine is the best disguise. Distraction is the best cover. While the meat simmered, I slipped the bank key into my bra and pulled out my old laptop. It groaned awake like an arthritic dog. I logged into my email, removed Marlene's address from my backup account, and changed the password one final time. August River, 1949. A date she never asked about, a place she never cared to know. The stew turned out fine. She said thank you. I said nothing. We watched the news in silence and I pretended to doze. She went to bed first, as always, locking her door like she needed protection from me. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, thinking of the river James and I used to walk beside in the summer. How the wind there never asked your age or your usefulness. Just blew. Before sunrise, I went to the clinic. Told them I wanted my emergency contact switched back to my niece in Oregon. Marlene had never liked her. Too loud, too opinionated. Which was exactly why I trusted her. "Are you sure?" the receptionist asked. "She's not local." "I'm sure." From there I walked to Green Bank, showed my ID and the key. A clerk led me into a quiet little room lined with drawers. Box B10 slid out with a metallic sigh. Inside, wrapped in a white handkerchief, was a roll of hundreds and a necklace James had given me when I passed my final nursing exam. I left the necklace. Took the cash. Back on the street, I paused at the corner, sunlight breaking soft behind me. The bus to the station would come in 20 minutes. A man in a gray coat brushed past, not even glancing my way. Good. Let them keep thinking I was stuck, compliant, afraid. But I had everything I needed now. And the train wouldn't wait. The station was colder than I remembered. Or maybe I was just more awake to the way the world pressed against you. How a draft found the thin spots in your coat. How footsteps echoed when no one expected you. I stood at platform 3 with my tote bag slung over my shoulder, ticket tied in my pocket. No suitcase. Just a change of clothes, some cash, and the name I decided to keep. The woman at the counter barely glanced at my ID when I checked in. That was the advantage of age. They see white hair and a quiet smile and assume obedience. They never suspect intent. "Train will be here in 10, ma'am," she said. "Thank you," I replied. "No rush." I spent the hour moving slowly, deliberately. Bought a coffee I didn't drink. Pretended to read notices on the bulletin board. Browsed the corner shop, noting what they sold: chargers, gum, postcards of lakes I'd never see. The man behind the counter never looked up once. The train pulled in 3 minutes early. I liked that. Early meant the world was still moving without waiting for anyone's permission. I boarded, settled near the window, slid my tote under the seat. When we rolled out of the station, I didn't wave. Didn't look back. No one was there anyway. 2 hours later, I switched to a bus at a rest stop near the border. The tiles were cracked. The vending machine hummed louder than the radio. I washed my hands twice in the restroom and studied my reflection. Not old, not young, just weathered like a river stone. On the next bus, a man with thinning hair and a badge that read Logan sat beside me. He nodded once. I nodded back. We didn't speak. The road stretched empty and long, autumn gnawing at the edges of the trees. At the next stop, I bought a new phone. Nothing fancy. Paid in cash. Registered it with no name, just numbers. Left my old phone on the bench, screen cracked, battery dead. Let Marlene wonder. Let her call it over and over. Hear nothing but my voicemail. Across from the station, I ducked into a pharmacy and bought a week's worth of the pills I actually needed. Not the cheaper ones they pushed at me. The pharmacist didn't question why I wanted a printed receipt. I folded it carefully into the roll of bills. By the time I checked into the hostel, the sun was gone. The woman at the desk didn't ask for more than a signature. She handed me a key to a plain room. 1 twin bed, 1 lamp, 1 towel. And for the first time in years, the silence felt like it belonged to me. The hostel room had a small window that looked out over a loading dock. I liked that. Trucks moved through the night, and so did I. I boiled water in the dented kettle they left on the desk, made a cup of tea, and sat on the edge of the narrow bed to slip off my shoes. My feet throbbed, my back ached, but I was upright. Unfound. Myself. When I lay down, I heard a train whistle somewhere in the distance. Not the one I had ridden. Another, headed further into the dark. I didn't care where it was going. I wasn't chasing a destination. I was chasing dignity. Tomorrow I would go to the consulate. Tonight I would sleep under my own name. Morning came quiet. No doors slamming, no voices calling, no alarms. Just gray light slipping through the thin curtain. For a second I forgot where I was. Then I smiled. My shoulders were sore, the air dry, trucks humming in the alley below. Proof I was still free. I boiled water again, dipped an instant tea bag into a chipped cup, and stood barefoot on the cold floor. No one was watching to see if I'd taken my pills. No one was asking what day it was. I knew anyway. Tuesday. I repacked my tote in silence. No rush, just folded each piece of clothing carefully, like the act itself was a claim. Shoes went on last, thick soles, quiet tread, steady. The consulate was 12 blocks from the hostel, and I walked the whole way. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. There's something holy about moving forward under your own power. The building was squat stone with flags shifting in the morning air. The security guard asked for ID. I handed him my passport, the real one, the one no one else knew about. He studied it a second too long before nodding me through. Inside smelled of dust, old air conditioning, and authority that never had to raise its voice. A woman behind glass asked what I needed. Temporary travel document, I said. I'll be crossing soon. Do you have proof of travel? I handed her my train ticket. She studied it, typed something into her computer, and told me to wait. I sat by the window. It overlooked a bare courtyard where a single tree stretched its branches like old fingers remembering something. An older man nearby coughed once, then fell asleep sitting straight up. I envied that kind of peace. Half an hour later, the woman called me back. You've been clear, she said. We'll issue the document today. Valid for 7 days. You'll need to carry it with your passport at the border. I nodded. Understood. She hesitated. You're traveling alone? Yes. You have family expecting you? No. Her eyes lingered for a moment. Not pity. Not judgment. Recognition. That quiet nod women give each other when they know what it means to walk away. I left with the paper folded neatly into a plain envelope. My name printed clean and sharp on top. Not borrowed. Not twisted. Mine. On the street outside, I bought a sandwich and sat on a bench to eat it. An older woman passed by with a terrier in a red coat. The dog barked once, then trotted on. She never looked at me. Nobody did. That felt good. Not the anonymity of being erased, but the kind you earn. After lunch, I walked along the canal. Boats drifted past, some empty, some stacked with crates. The water was tired but steady. Like me. I sat there for an hour, letting the air wash out the noise in my head. I thought of James. Thought of that first train trip we took together. How he packed a small flask of tea and 3 biscuits wrapped in a napkin. Every journey's easier with a biscuit in your pocket, he'd said. I wished he could see me now. Maybe he did. That night, back at the hostel, the clerk looked up. You're back, she said. Yes. Everything okay? Everything's exactly as it should be. In my room, I slid the travel document under my pillow. Tomorrow I'd cross. Tonight, I rested as someone who no longer needed permission. I woke before dawn. The sleep I'd had was light but clean, free of residue. I dressed in layers, cardigan with deep pockets, scarf tucked snug. Checked the document one more time, then hid it inside a paperback. Fiction makes the best hiding place for truth. At the front desk, the clerk handed me a paper cup of coffee. Cold out there, she said. I've seen worse, I told her. She gave me a smile that wasn't polite but real. The kind that says, you look like someone who's lived something. Outside, the wind cut sharp against my face. Not cruel, just enough to remind me I was alive and choosing this. A tram arrived 5 minutes late. I didn't mind. After years of being rushed for other people's convenience, stillness felt like protest. The border town was 2 hours away. I watched it grow closer through the tram-smeared glass. Every stop another stitch in the line I was crossing. The buildings grew older, the signs simpler. A man in a brown coat nodded off beside me, breathing slow and honest. I got off near the checkpoint, still early. The consulate had advised me. Before noon, less congestion, less attention. Their words. Mine were simpler. Earlier meant fewer chances to stop me. But first, shoes. The pair I wore was splitting at the soles. Fine for sidewalks, not for open ground. At a shop near the station, I tried 3 pairs. The third fit like memory. Wide enough, laced snug, firm grip. I paid in cash, tossed the old ones in the bin, and walked out taller. The crossing was on the far edge of town, past a line of vendors hawking coffee, scarves, cigarettes, and flags stitched into polyester. I ignored them. I wasn't a tourist. I was going home. Near the checkpoint, I paused. A low building leaned to the side, its sign-peeling windows clouded. I ducked inside to fix my scarf. That's when I heard her voice. You look like you need a map, not a border. I turned. A young woman, maybe 30, stood near the coffee machine. Hoodie faded, boots caked in mud. A backpack too big for her shoulders. I don't need a map, I said. I know exactly where I'm going. That makes one of us, she replied. Then softer. You crossing alone? Yes. Me too. Her hands were raw from cold, nails bitten down, but her eyes were sharp. "Where you headed?" I asked. "Anywhere, not here." We shared a paper cup of coffee. She didn't ask questions. Just told me about the river near her grandmother's house, where the grass bent one way all summer long. Her name was Leona. "You," she said, "must be Agnes." I smiled. "Of course I am. You look like someone who's had to say no more than once." We walked to the checkpoint together, not talking, just moving. The guards stood with their hands stuffed into their jackets, half asleep, half suspicious. I handed over my papers without apology. The man scanned them, stared, then stamped. Purpose of travel: home. Duration of stay: indefinite. Leona went next. Her voice didn't shake. We stepped through side by side into a strip of gravel road and sunlight. No sign, no ceremony, no applause. Just freedom. One step wide enough for both of us. The first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not silence. True quiet. The kind that comes when nobody's waiting for you. Nobody's calling your name. Just sky, road, and the fact that whatever came next would be chosen. Leona walked beside me, not rushing. Her backpack creaked when she shifted it. "You hungry?" she asked. I could be. We found a squat diner past the crossing, its neon sign flickering between open and pin. Inside, the man at the counter barely looked up. Just waved us to a booth. Leona ordered eggs and black coffee. I asked for tea and toast. She didn't ask me where I was from. I didn't ask what she was running from. That's the thing about women on the road. The details aren't the point. What matters is that you're moving. "You always travel alone?" she asked, breaking her toast. "I used to travel with my husband," I said. "Then I didn't." She nodded. "My mother says I'm selfish. That I should have stayed to help with my brother's kids. But she never asked if I wanted to be needed like that." "She wanted your hands," I told Leona. "Not your permission." Her mouth twitched. "Exactly." The tea wasn't strong, but it was hot. I cupped the mug, letting the warmth soak into my bones. After breakfast, we walked together to the bus station. She was headed west. I was going north. Different roads, different ends. We sat on a bench under the schedules, waiting. "You know," she said, "you remind me of somebody. Somebody good. My grandmother." She had this way of looking at people like she already knew how their story ended. I smiled. "And you don't blink much. Makes you harder to lie to." I liked her. Not with sentiment, but the kind of liking you feel when someone doesn't press for your story yet still makes space for it. Her bus came first. She adjusted her pack, turned once. "Thanks for the coffee." "You bought it," I reminded her. She shrugged. "Still." Then she was gone. I sat a while watching strangers drift in and out. A woman pushing a stroller. Two men arguing over a ticket. A teenage boy with earbuds who never looked up. Life kept happening. When my bus pulled in, I climbed aboard without a word. The driver didn't ask for ID. Just scanned the paper and waved me toward the back. I settled by the window again. The city I was bound for wasn't famous. No monuments. No family waiting. No welcome committee. But it had a consulate. And it had an old friend who once told me, "If you ever need a place where no one asks questions, come." We'd worked side by side in a clinic years back. She was a nurse, tougher than me at the time. Laughed too loud, smoked too much, but when patients cried she never flinched. I checked before I left. She still lived there, same number. 3 hours later, the bus hissed to a stop. I called. She picked up on the second ring. "Who's this?" "Someone who remembers the taste of bad hospital coffee and your favorite curse words," I said. A pause. "Agnes." "The same." "You need a ride?" "No. Just an address." She rattled it off. "I've got a spare room. And a kettle that still works." "I won't stay long." I didn't ask. I wrote the address on scrap paper, folded it, and stepped off the bus. The air smelled different here. Pavement mixed with pine. I started walking, one hand in my pocket, the other empty. That emptiness meant everything. Her name was Ruth. She opened the door in worn house shoes and a robe that had seen better decades. Her hair was cropped short and white now, but her eyes, those hadn't changed. Still sharp, still soft at the edges when she wanted them to be. "Well," she said, stepping aside. "Took you long enough." I walked slow. "You always did." The house smelled of dust, coffee, and something green simmering on the stove. I set my tote down. She hovered like she might hug me, then thought better of it. You hungry? Always. She served lentil soup, salty thick. I didn't care. We sat in her narrow kitchen, the clock ticking between us. She watched me eat the way nurses watch patients, quiet, all-seeing. When's the last time somebody cooked for you? She asked. Long time. When's the last time you were the one leaving? I met her eyes. She nodded. Exactly. After lunch we carried mugs out to the back step. No chatter. Just wind, birds, the scrape of a rake 2 houses over. You look good, she said at last. I look old. You always looked like somebody who knew where the exits were. That made me laugh under my breath. And you? I still keep the same knife under my pillow. Still think someone's coming? Not anymore. But habits don't move out easy. She let me stay 2 nights. No questions. Just a towel folded on the bed, tea in the mornings, and a spare key left on the table with a note. Come and go as you like. The latch sticks. Push hard. On the 3rd day, I slipped the key into my pocket. I'd heard about a community office with a legal aid desk. After breakfast, I walked there with what mattered. Passport, travel document, revoked power of attorney. Proof that I belonged to myself again. The woman behind the desk had short nails and a no-nonsense voice. You need help with finances, housing, legal protection? Not protection, I said. Clarity. She looked over the papers, tapped her pen twice. You're clean. No liens, no restrictions. Still sole account holder. She hesitated. Though there's a note. Recent attempt to freeze assets denied. I nodded. You might want to change your codes just in case. Already did. She smiled. Then you're ahead. I walked out with what I needed and nothing I didn't. Back at Ruth's I packed slow. She stood in the hall. You sure you're ready? I've been ready since they told me I wasn't. She handed me a slip of paper. A name, a number. If you get stuck. I won't. Still I took it. That afternoon I boarded a northbound train. Small town, coastal wind. A room already booked in a creaky house overlooking the harbor. I pressed my fingers to the window as the countryside slipped past, soft and grainy like an old film. The conductor stopped at my seat. Going far. Far enough. The town was smaller than I'd pictured. 1 main street, a gas station, a peeling post office, a bench bleached pale by salt and sun. The kind of place where strangers wave because everyone matters. From the hill I could see the harbor. Fishing boats rocking slow, the wind sharp with brine. It tasted like the last time James and I stood together on a ferry deck, a year before he died. The guest house stood at the edge of town. Old stone ivy, a brass bell on the door that rang with weight. A woman in her 60s opened up, round face, quick eyes. You're Agnes? Yes. 2nd floor room. View of the sea if you lean left. Breakfast 7 to 8, but I don't chase late sleepers. Thank you. She didn't ask questions. I liked her for that. The room was plain wood floor, 1 bed, lace curtains, a shelf of worn books. I opened the window and let the wind rush in like it recognized me. That afternoon I walked. Quiet streets, grass wild at the edges. I found the church without looking. Same stone. Same steeple. Maybe it was older. Maybe I was. I stood at the gate and remembered my mother's hand in mine, the bell on Sundays. I didn't go in. Instead, I followed the side path James and I had taken the summer we were 22. Grass taller now, but the curve in the trail was the same. It opened to cliffs, the sea restless below. I stood there a long while. The next morning I put on my best cardigan. I had an appointment at the consular office above the bank. The young man behind the desk was brisk but decent. He checked my papers, typed, then nodded. You're cleared for resident status renewal, he said. Want to add a forwarding address? Yes. I wrote the guest house. My number. My name. He hesitated. There's a flag on your file. Someone filed a missing persons report. Said you were unwell, maybe coerced. I didn't flinch. Dismissed. Yes. Everything checks out. He leaned lower. Do you want a block placed? To keep family from touching your records again? Yes. He clicked twice. Done. I walked out slow. Not tired. Just full. At the post office, I bought stamps and sent Ruth a letter. Arrived. Crossing complete. Still mine. Then I sat on the bench outside. The wind pulled at my sleeves. The tide came in steady and indifferent. I had crossed not just the border, but the line between who they said I was and who I had always been. That morning the wind was stronger. It came off the sea without apology, snapping laundry lines and scattering gulls like torn paper. I stood at the top of the coastal path, the one that bent just short of the cliff, and pulled my scarf tighter. My coat snapped in the wind, but my feet stayed firm. I hadn't planned to end up there. I just woke, drank 2 sweet tea, and walked. Sometimes the body knows before the mind catches up. There was a weathered bench near the drop, wood silvered by salt and time. I sat and let the wind work on me. I had done what they swore I couldn't. I had crossed. I had arrived. I had taken back my full name. But freedom, I learned, doesn't roar. It settles. Quiet. Like a house after guests leave, or a song that ends without clapping. The sea below kept moving. No destination, just rhythm. I thought of James, how he'd hold a map like it was a companion. How once in Donegal he got us lost on purpose. Let's see what happens, he'd said. Let's not rush knowing. We'd found a hill that day, sat, and ate soft biscuits. He'd pointed at the horizon. That's the thing about edges. They invite you to lean. I stayed on the bench until my fingers went stiff. Back at the guest house, an envelope waited under my door. No return address, just my name in a handwriting I hadn't seen since childhood. Inside, Mom, please just let us know you're safe. D. No accusations. No orders. Just that. I set it on the dresser. I didn't answer. My silence was my reply. That afternoon I walked into town. The bakery smelled of cinnamon. I bought 2 rolls, tucked one into my coat pocket, habit. At the library I asked for a card. The woman at the desk smiled. Use whatever name you like. We go on trust here. I liked that. I borrowed a thin novel and read until dusk turned the sky the color of old bruises. That night I scribbled a list on the back of a receipt. Call the power company. Open a local bank account, buy gloves, write Ruth, and last, visit the cemetery. I hadn't gone yet, not because I was avoiding it, but because I needed to go empty of excuses. The wind howled while I wrote. I let it. Proof I was here. Accountable to no one but myself. The cemetery sat beyond the hill, past the chapel and blackberry thickets. My feet knew the way. The gate groaned open. Inside, time had leaned the stones, moss had softened the names. I found them near the back. Margaret and Thomas Lynch. My mother's stone was gentler, a rose carved below her name. My father's was plain, just a fisherman's son. I stood there long. No tears. No trembling. Just breath and truth. Margaret was buried in spring. I was 30. James had stood beside me, holding my hand in both of his. Quiet because some grief requires silence. Thomas went 7 years later. Alone in the house he refused to leave. I was born near salt, he'd said. Let me die near it. They'd wanted a daughter who stayed close, married quietly, took her place at the table without question. I wasn't that daughter. I loved them anyway. I knelt, wiped moss from their names, and spoke. I made it. Not for you, not only, but because you taught me what standing looks like even when I fought it. This isn't a return to obedience. It's a return to origin. That's different. The breeze slipped through the stones like cloth. I laid a lily on my mother's grave, picked fresh that morning, no permission asked. On my way back I stepped into the chapel. Doors open, empty, smelling of polish and time. No prayers. Just presence. That was enough. Later, a child balanced along a low wall. Her mother shadowed her steps, not holding, just watching. The girl waved. I waved back. She didn't ask who I was. That too was grace. At the guest house I asked the host for a pen. In my room I wrote a firm letter to the bank. Transfer all funds, close outside access, final and binding. I signed steady. Agnes Lorraine Mayers. The bank was stone-faced, quiet. The clerk raised her brows. The full balance? Yes. Any second signature? Not anymore. She scanned, nodded. Authorization revoked. It's clean. I added. Please note the beneficiary, LM Foundation. She looked up, recalibrated. Card for that account. No. It's not mine to use. I walked out lighter, nothing in my hands, nothing left hanging. That evening I reactivated my old phone for one message only. I typed slow, James, I crossed. Don't call. Don't look. All funds moved. Rights revoked. Tell Holly the house was never hers. I won't answer again. Mom. I hit send. Blocked the number. Turned the phone off. Slipped it into a drawer where silence could finally grow. Later I bought bread, posted a letter to Ruth, and caught myself in the hallway mirror. Not younger. Not stronger. But uncaught. At dinner the host handed me a note. It worked. They didn't stop me. One town over. New room. New name. Thank you. L. I smiled, folded it, set it by the window for the sea to read too. That night I poured a glass of wine. Sat with my feet up. No TV, no noise. Just the creak of floors and the quiet that comes when no one demands you speak. The next morning the wind shifted north. Colder, sharper, humming against the window panes. I liked it. Reminded me I was still near salt. I woke early, opened the curtains before the sun finished climbing. The harbor was dark, boats asleep. I made tea slow. No rush. No doorbells. No false concern pressed against my life. On Main Street I saw a flyer. Community potluck. All welcome. Below it, legal aid volunteer needed. I slipped the second notice into my pocket. Ruth's words echoed. If you've been silenced, at least hold the door for the next woman through. That evening, back at the harbor cliffs, gulls circled below, clouds raced above. Urgency and patience in the same sky. When I returned, a parcel waited. Postmark City. Inside, a wooden box. No note, only a strip of paper. I never knew how strong you were. Now I do. Lilum. Beneath it, a brass key worn and unknown. I placed it beside Leona's note. Some things you carry, not use. That night, I wrote 3 letters. One offering my time at the legal aid desk. One to Ruth promising a visit. And one to no one. I tucked it into my journal. If they take your name, your freedom, remember you don't need permission to take them back. Start walking. Even if it's alone. Especially then. Later that week I bought a green coat. Heavy wool, deep collar. The shopkeeper said, "Looks like it was waiting for you." I paid cash, walked taller. I moved into a flat above a bookshop. 1 room, sunlight, creaking floors that asked if you meant every step. I did. At night I unpacked slowly. Papers, letters, expired passports. I didn't burn them. Keeping them wasn't a wound. It was a record. Sometimes survival isn't escape. It's staying put and saying, I remain. I walked to the square one evening. The library had posted a photo from the potluck. Women in wool coats, children cider cups. I caught Leona's face in the crowd. Just a glimpse. Enough. A woman outside the bakery stopped me. Excuse me, you used to be. I still am, I said gently. She blinked then smiled. I've seen your name on the board. You're helping now. Not helping, I corrected. Just standing beside. That night, I opened my journal. Reread the letter to any woman. I added one more line. And if no one believes you, believe yourself first. Then I closed the book. Breathed in, not as someone who finished, but as someone who had finally begun. If this story finds you, share it. If you see yourself in it, speak it. If it leaves you quiet, let your voice carry through someone louder. We don't wait for permission to be whole.